Most men chase. Most men beg. Most men crumble under the weight of their own desire, and the moment they do, a woman's interest dies like a flame drowned in cold water. But there is a darker path, a method whispered in the shadows of history, a tactic Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology gave it a name. It is not about tricks, not about games, not about forcing attraction. It is about becoming the kind of man whose silence carries more gravity than another man's words, whose presence is louder than another man's pursuit, whose restraint seduces more deeply than neediness ever could. Tonight, I'll show you 5 pillars of this hidden method, not to manipulate but to master yourself so deeply that a woman feels the pull of your gravity without you ever lifting a finger. Because Machiavelli's dirtiest method was never deception. It was control of self, of emotion, of presence. The power of invisible value. A woman is not drawn to what you show. She is drawn to what she detects, what she suspects, what she wonders about in the quiet moments when she's alone. She is pulled, almost magnetically, toward the parts of you she cannot clearly see, the shadows behind your confidence, the silence behind your eyes, the depth you don't parade around like a hungry man seeking applause. Modern men have forgotten this ancient truth. They believe attraction is built through noise, loud boasting, endless messaging, constant displays of effort. But Machiavelli understood something few men ever grasp. Human desire grows in the spaces where certainty dies and curiosity wakes. The strongest influence does not come from fireworks, but from a slow-burning ember hidden beneath the ashes. A man who keeps his cards close does not weaken his position. He strengthens it, because mystery is the currency of influence, and mystery is forged not through deception, but through self-restraint, a controlled revelation of who you are, and a refusal to hand out your identity like a cheap pamphlet. You don't brag, because a man who truly carries value has no hunger to prove it. You don't overshare, because your inner world is not a marketplace for public consumption. You don't flood her with attention, because a kingdom that gives away all its gold becomes unworthy of invasion. Instead, you operate with a different law, the law of quiet confidence, of deliberate presence, of a masculine aura that whispers instead of screams. You say less than you know. You reveal less than you feel, you offer less than you could, and because of that your presence grows in her imagination, stretching into the uncharted corners of her mind, where fantasy breathes life into reality. Most men lose power by speaking too fast, revealing too much, and attempting to force clarity where ambiguity would serve them better. They rush to explain their intentions, to clarify their feelings, to prove their worth through overexposure. But a woman isn't seduced by the man who explains himself. She is seduced by the man she cannot fully decode, the man whose emotional architecture is not instantly legible, the man who seems to hold history behind his eyes, lessons beneath his silence, and purpose woven into the fabric of his composure. A man like this does not hide. He simply doesn't beg to be understood. He lets her curiosity approach him first. He lets her fascination grow naturally, not because he demands it, but because he refuses to perform for it. Invisible value is not a trick, it is a lifestyle. It is the practice of building a life so rich, so full, so internally fortified, that your silence becomes a mirror reflecting her own curiosity. She starts wondering who you are when you're not around, where your mind goes when you fall quiet, what drives your discipline, what anchors your calm, what fuels that subtle fire in your tone. Women are intuitive creatures. They do not fall for the surface. They fall for the undertow. They want to feel something beneath your demeanor, a depth that invites exploration without ever collapsing into neediness. Invisible value means you do not chase validation. You create an aura that naturally draws it. You do not explain your life. You live it with enough purpose that she senses its weight. You do not beg for attention. You command it through the gravity of self-mastery. This is why the mysterious man, the quiet, composed, internally ambitious man, has always stood above the loud, reactive, approval-seeking man. He does not try to seduce, he simply is, fully, unapologetically, silently powerful, and that silence, that calm self-possession, that subtle, unspoken certainty creates a psychological pull stronger than any compliment, any pursuit, any performance. Because when a woman feels that a man has more depth than he reveals, she doesn't just want to be in his presence. She wants to understand what lies behind it, and once she wants to understand you, she is already drawn in. That is invisible value. That is the shadow that seduces without speaking, and that is why the man who cannot be fully decoded becomes the man she cannot easily forget. Control your desire, or be controlled by it. Desire is not weakness. It is the spark of life, the fire inside the masculine chest, the pulse that reminds you that you are still capable of feeling something real in a world built on numbness. But letting desire command your actions, letting it steer your decisions, your voice, your posture, your sense of worth, that is where men crumble, because desire is meant to be ridden like a stallion, not obeyed like a master. A stoic man understands this instinctively. He knows that the moment desire becomes desperation, he is no longer a man standing firmly on his feet. He is a man leaning forward, off balance, reaching, grasping, begging for something outside himself to stabilize him. And this is the moment he loses not only the woman, but himself. The moment you need her, you lose her. The moment you chase, you shrink. The moment you seek validation, you hand over your crown with your own trembling fingers. Women feel the shift instantly, not because they are cruel, but because human nature is wired to recoil from desperation and gravitate toward emotional sovereignty. Desire becomes attractive only when it is contained, directed, disciplined, harnessed by the man who carries it. Not hidden, not suppressed, but mastered. So you invert the dynamic. You allow your desire to exist, but you do not let it steer you. You let her feel your interest, quiet, stable, grounded, but never your dependency. You show warmth, not hunger. You show attention, not obsession. You show presence, not pursuit. This is the difference between a man offering connection and a man surrendering his dignity. Machiavelli, though speaking of rulers and kingdoms, touched on a universal truth. It is better to be desired than to be desperate. A leader who begs is no leader. A lover who clings is no lover. And a man whose emotional center collapses under the weight of wanting a woman becomes predictable, malleable, manipulable. But a man who governs his impulses, who feels desire yet stands firm, who wants her yet remains whole without her, who moves toward her without losing himself, that man becomes untouchable. Not because he is cold, not because he is indifferent, but because he is rooted. Most men allow desire to cloud their judgment. They text too quickly, respond too eagerly, sacrifice too easily, and give too much too soon. They become emotional gamblers, placing all their chips on the table at once, hoping she will validate the risk they never should have taken. But a stoic man keeps part of himself reserved, unavailable, untamed, held back with a quiet grip that signals strength rather than withholding. His desire does not spill recklessly into his actions. It sits behind his eyes like a secret fire, visible only in glimpses, powerful precisely because it is controlled. A woman senses when a man wants her but does not need her, and that combination is intoxicating. It signals that he is a man governed by purpose, not by impulse. A man who can walk toward her with open desire, yet walk away with his dignity intact. A man who chooses her, not collapses into her. To control your desire is not to kill it. It is to understand its place in the hierarchy of your life. Your purpose stands above it. Your discipline sits beside it. Your identity remains beyond its reach. Desire should enhance your life, not replace it. It should sharpen you, not shatter you. It should fuel your actions, not dictate them. When a man learns to convert desire into direction, when he channels that energy into his goals, his craft, his growth, he becomes magnetic in a way that no pursuit can replicate, because nothing is more attractive than a man who is fully alive, fully driven, fully engaged with something beyond the woman he wants. His desire becomes one part of him, not the entirety of him, and this is the essence of masculine polarity. A man who governs his impulses becomes a man no woman can manipulate, because he is not ruled by longing, not weakened by need, not seduced by the illusion that she is the source of his fulfillment. He desires her deeply, but he belongs to himself completely. And that is the kind of man who pulls a woman toward him without ever lifting a finger. Emotional immovability. You want to know the rarest masculine trait? Not muscles, not charm, not intelligence or wit. Those are common, repeatable, easily simulated. The trait that truly grips a woman's attention with quiet, inescapable force is emotional immovability, a presence so grounded that the world can shake, and yet something in you remains completely still. Emotional stability, a controlled fire, a storm sealed behind steel gates. This is the essence of masculine gravity. This is the aura that makes a woman lean in without realizing she's moving. Because in a world filled with men who react, men who panic, men who crumble at the slightest shift in mood or affection, a man who stays centered becomes a rarity so compelling that it borders on myth. You don't react to tests, not because you're pretending not to care, but because you genuinely refuse to be governed by emotional turbulence. You understand that her tests are not attacks. They're reflections of her desire to understand your core. She is not testing your strength to break you. She is testing your strength to believe in you. You don't erupt when challenged. Anger is easy. Losing your temper is effortless. Any weak man can do that. But keeping the fire contained, letting it heat you from the inside without ever allowing it to scorch the world around you, that is mastery, that is command, that is the energy that makes others feel safe in your presence. Even when you say nothing, you don't collapse when she becomes distant. You don't spiral into panic, searching for explanations, rewriting your value in your mind as if her silence suddenly changed who you are. Distance does not destabilize the man who is anchored in himself. He does not chase, he does not beg, he does not bleed emotionally at the first sign of uncertainty. He lets the space breathe. He lets the moment settle. He stays rooted, calm, patient, because he knows that storms pass, and those who stand firm through them earn respect without having to demand it. Instead, you carry yourself like a mountain, unchanged by the weather around you. Rain or sun, wind or stillness, warmth or cold, your foundation holds. Your presence does not fluctuate with the emotional climate of others. You are not defined by external storms, you define yourself by internal solidity. People, women included, fear losing what is stable and value what is not easily shaken. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that influence is not born from volatility, but from consistency. A ruler who remains calm during chaos becomes a symbol of power. A man who remains emotionally grounded becomes a symbol of trust. This doesn't mean you never feel. It means you have built a fortress around your emotions, not to hide them, but to hold them. You experience deeply, but respond deliberately. You feel intensely, but act wisely. A woman is drawn to the fortress, not the tent blown by the wind. The fortress does not move for every gust. It does not sway for every passing storm. It stands silent, commanding, unapologetically present. In that steadiness she finds something rare. A man she cannot destroy with a mood swing, a man she cannot unbalance with uncertainty, a man whose worth does not fluctuate with her approval. This kind of emotional immovability is not coldness. It is control. It is choosing not to drown in your emotions, even when the waves rise high. It is choosing not to react impulsively even when provoked. It is choosing to breathe, to pause, to respond from strength rather than instinct. When a woman feels that your emotions belong to you and not to her whims, she respects you. When she sees that you can remain calm in the face of tension, she trusts you. When she senses that you will not shatter under pressure, she feels safe with you, even if she never admits it openly. Because emotional immovability sends a message that reverberates through every interaction, I am a man you cannot easily sway. I am a man who chooses, not reacts. I am a man governed by principles, not impulses. And that message, spoken without words, creates the deepest pull of all. It tells her that you are a man who will not abandon himself for approval, a man who will not crumble for affection, a man who stands tall regardless of who stays or leaves. A man like that does not seek validation. A man like that carries it. And in a world full of emotional chaos, the man who remains unmoved becomes unforgettable. The ART of strategic absence. Presence creates comfort, absence creates desire, and a man who understands the difference between the two holds a power that most men spend their entire lives chasing, but never truly possess. Because in the modern world, men have been trained to believe that the more they give, the more they offer, the more they show up, the more they call, text, reassure, pursue and perform, the more attractive they will become. But the truth is far darker, far simpler, far more ancient. Women do not crave what is always available. They crave what is felt in its absence. This is the art Machiavelli understood long before the word psychology even existed. He knew that scarcity sharpens value, that distance intensifies longing, and that the human mind cannot hunger for what it consumes without limit. A man who is always around is like air. Necessary, yes, but invisible, unnoticed, taken fully for granted. But a man whose presence is deliberate, controlled, intentional, he becomes more like fire, felt, desired, remembered and respected. The art of strategic absence is not about games, manipulation or emotional punishment. It is about discipline, the kind that separates you from the masses of impulsive, needy, hyper-available men who crumble at the first sign of affection. It is the understanding that every moment you step back with purpose, you increase the weight of your presence even when you are nowhere near her. Most men fear absence. They fear losing her. They fear being forgotten. They fear being replaced. So they cling, they stay close, they suffocate the connection with constant presence, never realizing that their fear is the very thing that erodes their value. But a man who practices strategic absence operates differently. He knows that distance is not a threat, because nothing can threaten a man who is whole on his own. He knows that stepping back does not decrease attraction. It intensifies it in ways presence never could. He knows that silence is not emptiness. It is a container where longing can grow. You do not disappear out of immaturity. You do not go silent to punish her or force a reaction. You are not withdrawing to play games like a boy starving for attention. You step back with purpose. You give space with intention. You let the connection breathe, stretch and echo, because you understand that the mind remembers what the heart misses. A man who is always available becomes predictable. Predictability becomes comfort. Comfort becomes routine. Routine becomes invisibility. But when you appear with intention, not too often, not too eagerly, not too reactively, and then withdraw with the same disciplined intention, you create a psychological rhythm that keeps you imprinted in her mind. She begins to feel the contrast. She notices the shifts. She feels the energy when you're present and the void when you're not. Your absence becomes a reminder of your value. It becomes a signal that you are not dependent on her attention. It becomes evidence that your world does not revolve around her. And paradoxically, this makes her world bend slightly toward you. Machiavelli used absence as a tool of influence, understanding that people respect what they cannot easily access, fear losing what is not guaranteed, and pursue what momentarily withdraws from their reach. But understand this, strategic absence only works when backed by real substance. If your life is empty, your absence means nothing. If your mission is non-existent, your distance feels hollow. If you step back but have nothing you're stepping toward, then your absence becomes neglect, not strength. Absence must be the shadow of a life lived with purpose, not the echo of a life waiting for her to fill it. When a man practices strategic absence properly, he is not rejecting her, he is reminding her that his time is valuable, reminding her that his attention is earned, not assumed, reminding her that his life continues, moves, grows, expands with or without her presence. And this reminder awakens something deep within a woman, a sense of curiosity, a flicker of longing, a desire to be part of the world he is clearly building without hesitation. Because in the end, the man who becomes too available becomes forgettable, but the man who uses absence with intention becomes memorable in a way that lingers, haunts, pulls her thoughts back to him even when she tries to focus elsewhere. Strategic absence is not distance, it is gravity, and when mastered it turns a man into something far more powerful than wanted. It turns him into something missed.